Maritza, thank you so much for being here. Of
Thank you
course,
so much for having me.
yeah, no, it's great because of course you and I we do know each other from
Yes,
kind of a few different ways now,
yes, yeah.
but also of course professionally our work somewhat overlaps because you are the people keeper, so making sure that people are happy in work and that they stay. But tell me more about your work and kind of what it is that you do.
Yeah, so thanks again for having me on your podcast. And yeah, it's so basically the way I can describe it is that I work with growth hungry business owners who really, really want to grow their business. They've got great plans to scale,
Mm,
but they can't do that because they have a bit of a
okay.
revolving door of staff.
Yeah.
So I help them to find out what's causing their people to leave. I help them fix it
Mm,
and then prevent it from happening again, as
yeah.
well as looking at, okay, well, what does that growth look like from a people perspective?
Right.
How can
Wow.
you make sure that you have the team around you to help you
Mm,
get to where you need to be in
mm,
5 years' time, or to
mm.
grow your revenue by 30% or whatever that target
Wow.
might be?
Okay.
But yeah, that's it in a nutshell.
Okay. Sure. It's got kind of all about growth, but from a
Mm.
people perspective.
Retention, yeah, and specifically from a retention perspective,
Okay.
yeah, as well,
Sure.
because we can,
Mm,
I'm sure we've all seen lots of
mm,
businesses that have scaled and
yeah.
grown, but
Yeah.
actually the experience that people
Mm,
have
mm,
isn't that great,
right.
and commercially then it starts to erode away at all of those good
Mm,
things, the profitability and things like that,
yeah.
because it's an expensive problem to have. Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. Got it. Because I suppose essentially at its core, business is people
Mm.
like bouncing around each other, trying to go towards the same goal. And if it's not
Yeah.
working, then enter Maritza. So
Yeah, yeah, pretty much. Yeah, pretty much. It's not necessarily individual sort of issues. It's typically, I guess, helping business owners to create that environment in which
Mm,
people
yeah,
thrive
yeah,
and help them to reach their goal as well, like the
yeah,
business goal.
yeah,
Because they're not, they're
mm,
both can be true at the same time, that, it
yeah,
can be a great environment to work in, and the
yeah,
business owner can enjoy running that business because they've
mm,
got a great team to support them.
yeah,
And then
right,
you reap all of the commercial benefits and, obviously the sort of feel good factor as well,
yeah,
which makes things much more pleasant to be experiencing and be in
yeah,
than actually reacting and just constantly solving and firefighting problems.
yeah, yeah.
Yeah.
Oh, definitely. And I'm curious to know more about like what is a good working environment where people are happy and they stay? Because of course
Mm,
this is something that comes up in my work all the time when I will work
mm.
with a family business, that the whole dynamic is so it's different from
Yeah.
a non-family owned business.
Yeah.
And it is a pain point that my clients will sometimes come to me with about not being able
Mm,
to keep staff, and they're
yeah.
aware that staff are not quite comfortable being around a
Yes.
family dynamic. But
Yeah.
you and I approach that from very, very different
Yeah.
ways. Um,
Yeah.
but
Yeah, I suspect it's probably different ways, but probably similar in a way, right?
mm,
I think so. If we look at the main reasons why people typically leave, from
mm,
my experience, they typically leave roles because the work environment,
mm,
or the leadership and culture,
yeah,
or the offer, the reward, the opportunity
yeah,
isn't there, or there's
okay,
something missing within those three buckets.
yeah,
And I guess, from the stuff that you see, there's
mm,
probably something touching all three of those buckets, but I would imagine that the main ones are the work environment
yeah,
because they're working with a slightly different dynamic,
yeah,
and then the leadership and culture as well, because
yeah,
again,
yeah,
it's my own experience of
mm,
family businesses is that, those people who are in the
mm,
family,
mm,
they might have conversations that other people aren't
yeah,
privy to
yeah,
because they are a family, and that's
yeah,
fine.
yeah,
But then it's almost that FOMO, isn't it? Of like, oh, actually,
okay,
we're not being included, but
yeah,
perhaps unintentionally, they might not be doing it on
yeah,
purpose.
sure,
Um,
mm,
so yeah, so if you look at the reasons why people leave,
mm,
they're also the things that you
mm,
need to, the levers that you need to
mm,
pull
mm,
to help people stay, to make your business sticky in that sense. So, for the work environment, the
mm,
classic one for me is things like expectations,
mm,
communicating really, really well what you're expecting
mm,
people to do, but also,
mm,
um, you know, setting out those boundaries, isn't it, on both
Mm,
sides, so that
mm,
people feel really comfortable that they know
yeah,
exactly what they're there to deliver
yeah,
and what the other end of the bargain is. So it goes
yeah,
back to that offer side of things and the opportunity.
yeah,
Having the right
yeah.
resources and tools to do things,
Mm,
having some
mm,
decent processes in place that means that
mm,
people aren't making things up from scratch every time,
yeah,
and they're not
yeah,
dealing with ambiguity every time.
yeah.
Having a reasonable workload as well, because I don't know whether this happens,
Mm,
Vivian, I've never seen it, but
mm,
I wonder whether in
mm,
some family businesses, some of the
mm.
workload gets pushed out to those non-family
Sure.
members, and it may then become unreasonable, and
Sure.
people then may feel that they can't raise
Yeah,
that as an issue.
yeah,
So
sure.
yeah, so just thinking about, being quite
Mm,
almost clinical about the work that needs to be done and it
mm,
being divided out equally and
yeah,
fairly.
yeah,
And when people are overloaded, to be
yeah,
to make sure that they feel comfortable enough to speak up and say,
yeah,
I need some help, or
yeah.
whatever that might be.
Okay.
Those things will then point to things like the management, leadership,
Mm,
culture, that kind of thing as well, because
okay.
communication really is super important
Mm,
in those
mm,
instances.
yeah, yeah.
Um, and whether it's about how the business is doing or how things are
Mm,
progressing, or equally setting those expectations of
mm,
actually this is what great looks like in this role and this is what we're
mm,
expecting.
mm,
If you're not communicating that effectively,
mm,
people then
mm,
are they're not clear on what's
yeah,
expected of them. They don't know what they
yeah,
need to do.
yeah.
And again, communication I mentioned
Mm,
previously, it can be
yeah.
it can be one that I guess can be quite challenging, but not
Mm,
only from those non-family but
yeah,
non-family members in the
yeah,
business, but
yeah,
also from the family members in the
yeah,
business. I guess on the
yeah,
flip side, you can get a bit more sort of direct and a bit
yeah,
more like edgy. If you're
yeah,
having a
totally.
bad day, you
Yeah.
kind of don't filter
Mm,
it as much, would you, with a family
yeah.
member? And so I guess that could make the
No.
tensions rise. Yeah,
Yeah.
right. So
Yeah.
so yeah.
Definitely. I've
Mm,
certainly, it's something that my clients have come to me for, and something that I will
mm,
help them navigate is the expectation for each and every person.
mm,
Because some people will feel like there is very different expectation on a family
yeah,
member,
yeah.
um, in comparison to a non-family member, which to a
Mm,
certain extent is very reasonable because it is a
mm.
different dynamic.
Yeah.
So it can't be ignored.
Yes.
But nonetheless, it is the the kind of job description, so to speak,
Yeah. Yeah.
must be there for everybody.
Yes. Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah.
Because it's not just, I always say that, the job description, um, it needs to be free. It's not one of those stand still
Mm,
in time documents, right?
mm,
Because
yeah.
every day something's doing, a job
Yes.
changes, right?
Yes.
But it's not, the purpose of it isn't just for the individual in that role.
Mm,
It's for everyone else around to understand as well, actually,
yeah.
where the swim lanes are.
Yeah.
That
Yeah.
person, John's responsible for this, Linda's responsible for
Mm,
that.
mm, mm, yeah.
Whatever. So
Yeah.
it helps that, again, it's the communication thing,
Yeah.
isn't
Yeah. Yeah.
it?
Completely. And
I've been on I've been
I
on a few podcasts now, and it seems that communication is the common theme that runs through.
Okay, sure. But me too. Like communication runs
Mm,
through all my work. The same
mm.
as inclusivity, which I know
Yes.
that is something you already mentioned about
Yes.
making people feel included, or not only making
Mm.
them feel, like actually including.
Yeah. I think as well, because of that family dynamic and the
Mm,
non, I guess it's
yeah,
the family and non-family.
yeah, yeah.
It, I'm again somewhat assuming, but I have seen
Mm,
it, with a couple of clients who I've worked with, is that
mm,
there's that
mm,
thing of, but I'm not part of that group.
yeah,
It's almost like you've got to be part of, you
yeah,
already get some groups and some
yeah,
relationships formed within
yeah,
a business,
yeah,
but then when you've got the family
mm,
layer on top of
mm,
that, you can
yeah,
feel a little bit more excluded and
yeah.
out of that. Yeah.
Yes,
Yeah.
completely. I think that
Mm.
it is ripe and ready for cliques
Mm.
to be developed.
Mm.
And I know one thing that I will often kind of coach my clients through is to the extent to which there is exclusivity, and it almost
Mm.
needs to be acknowledged and saying, yeah, there is a circle around the family.
Yeah.
And non-family business members of staff, there needs to be a line, but then to what extent is
Mm.
that line super super structured? At what point,
Hmm.
where does fairness come into it?
Yeah.
And what is reasonable for it to be inclusive and exclusive?
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
how would you guide your clients to make an environment inclusive? What would how would you
S-
navigate that?
So, at the risk of repeating myself, I think a key
Sure.
thing is communication, but
Communication.
because it's enabling communication at all
Mm,
levels, but
mm,
also that it's okay to bring
yeah,
things up,
yeah.
even if those things might be perhaps feedback for
Mm,
improvement or
mm,
negative things of like,
yeah,
actually, when you say this, I feel like this, or when
yeah.
this happens, this is how I feel, or this is what when this happens, this is the
Mm,
result that it has on me, on my work,
yeah,
or me as a person. And
yeah.
I think, the key
Mm,
to
mm,
I guess reducing that exclusivity
mm,
feeling is
mm,
to make everyone feel like their
mm.
voice carries equal value,
Yes.
which can be
Yeah,
incredibly challenging in a
yeah,
family business,
sure. Yeah.
because the family will obviously have
Mm,
the most times will have the
mm,
business's best interest at heart,
sure.
but
Yeah.
and their voice might
Mm,
feel louder, but I think you
mm,
then have to work even harder to
yeah,
counteract that, and so that
yeah,
that those who aren't in the family feel that they have got that equal
yeah,
weight, and that their
yeah,
feedback, their concerns,
yeah,
their um
yeah,
celebrations, their
yeah.
wins, that
Mm,
it's treated in the
mm,
same way,
mm,
so that
yeah.
you reduce it. I think there will always be
Mm,
something there that you
mm,
can't get rid
yeah.
of entirely.
Okay.
But the point for me
Mm,
is that it is to actually diminish that and
mm,
to reduce it and to
yeah,
mitigate that risk that people will
yeah,
feel that way as
yeah.
best possible. Yeah,
Okay, sure.
yeah,
For you, when
yeah.
you're encouraging communication, will it be literally time and space to get together and talk? Or it might be
Yeah.
there might be mechanisms like vehicles way to
Yeah, I'm a huge fan of just getting together and talking,
okay.
because
Good
actually
old-fashioned
that's
talking.
when yeah,
Yeah.
that's when and within
Mm,
a time frame, because
mm,
things
mm,
can when you do start getting together to just
mm,
talk without an agenda or without at least some
sure.
outcomes that you're trying to get to the end
Yeah.
of at the end of that meeting,
Yeah.
things can
Okay.
go astray, right?
Sure.
But
Yeah.
I'm a huge fan of like, saying, right, well,
Mm,
we've got an hour. These are the
uh-huh.
things that we want to explore during this time
Yeah.
and find some solutions for X, Y, Z. And, actually, this is
Mm,
the sort of outcome that we're looking for. But
yeah.
that doesn't mean that that's set in stone. Just
Sure.
just some boundaries around what you're talking
Yeah.
about. Because I think when you move away from that,
Mm,
people feel that they have to, and you
yeah.
use, let's say, for argument's sake, a survey or like an
Sure.
anonymous feedback, or
Yeah.
people feel that they either want to conceal their identity,
Mm,
which
yeah.
I would also question, because if somebody feels that
Okay.
they need to do that, why is that?
Okay.
Why don't they feel that they can speak up honestly?
Yeah.
But then when you look at, let's say,
Mm,
for argument's sake, a survey, it's
mm,
quite sort of prescriptive in terms of the
mm.
questions that you ask
Yeah.
and the responses that you then elicit, and you can't
Mm,
add context.
yeah.
You can't really get a sense of like the emotion behind it as well, which is super
Yeah.
important.
Yeah.
And just ask clarifying questions,
Yeah. Mm,
so yeah, I'd
mm.
say definitely getting together. It doesn't
Getting
have to be
together.
in person. If they're a
Sure.
virtual business, that can work really well as well. So long
Totally.
as you've got those like boundaries and
Yeah. Yeah.
I hate the word rules, but some kind
Sure.
of guidelines and
Yeah.
framework,
No.
I think that can work really well as well.
Yeah. Totally. I
Mm.
really like it that you talk about like rules, for lack of a
Yeah,
better word, because
yeah,
rules is a word that I will use.
yes,
Um,
yeah,
of like this is like the rules that we're going to follow. Like it's
yeah,
gonna this we're going to talk for 1 hour,
yeah,
like no more. Like even something like every person gets to speak once before somebody speaks twice. just like
Yes,
little guidelines like this.
absolutely.
Um,
Yeah.
and
And I think in those guidelines, even saying we want to hear from you. This isn't going to
yeah,
be, the family take priority or their opinions are heard more. We
yeah,
want to hear from everyone, and we want to
mm,
feel that everyone can raise it. And even if it's a bad thing, we would rather
mm,
hear about it than you sit
yeah,
there and not say anything, because that's
totally.
how you create that space where people can
Yeah,
feel comfortable enough to raise something. Because
yeah,
thinking about it from the non-family member side, it can
hmm,
be really intimidating to say,
yeah,
actually,
yeah,
working with you two brothers, for
mm,
example, in our
yeah,
department is really difficult.
yeah,
And so
yeah,
you've really got to make the effort to
mm,
allow people the opportunity to say that
mm,
quite
mm,
freely in a,
mm,
in a respectful way, but to give that
sure.
feedback where it's needed.
Yeah,
And yeah, people won't feel comfortable doing
yeah,
that. And
yeah,
and understandably, right? Because
totally.
you're potentially
Yeah,
attacking, or it can be perceived as
sure.
attacking that family dynamic.
Yeah,
Um,
totally,
yeah, so just
totally.
making it really
Mm,
a safe space where
mm,
people can say things
yeah,
again, like I say respectfully,
yeah,
it's not supposed to be a
yeah,
slagging match, but where
yeah,
people can say things and not worry about how they
yeah.
then might be treated afterwards.
Okay,
And I
yeah,
think that applies in any business,
yeah,
more so obviously in that family dynamic. But I think,
yeah.
people don't
Mm,
tend to
mm,
feel from experience comfortable
mm,
to
yeah,
raise things, either because they feel that they might
yeah,
be,
yeah,
reprimanded for bringing things up, or
yeah,
whether directly or indirectly,
yeah.
or because they
Consequences.
feel that their feedback won't be heard and actioned on.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
totally.
yeah.
I feel the go on. Yeah,
And I
yeah,
was going to say that doesn't mean that, you get, say, 50 suggestions, you've got to do all
mm,
50,
yeah,
right? It's about,
yeah,
let's select the top
mm,
three because that's all we can
mm,
focus on at one time.
yeah,
And this is why we feel that these are the
yeah,
top three, or even use that
yeah,
meeting to agree what those top three things are,
yeah. Okay.
but taking action is super important. Yeah,
Taking
yeah.
action. Yeah.
Mm,
I
mm,
hear you that there's some value to be taken there about
mm.
then prioritizing what the feedback is going to be the action point, or even
Yeah,
kind of taking an objective look of some feedback is meaningful, valuable, and others might not be at this time.
yeah,
I think that that's an important piece.
yeah.
And I enjoy it how you talk about the consequences, because I
Mm,
found when I facilitate conversations between people that might be
mm.
difficult and challenging, I think one of the biggest hurdles for me, and one of my main aims as the facilitator, is to make people
Yeah.
feel that there won't be consequences, or that we will talk about the consequences of then
Yes.
speaking out.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
it's
yeah, yeah.
yeah,
So that everyone's really, really clear on what's happening,
yeah,
and yeah, yeah,
yeah. What
yeah,
happens now? Because I
yeah,
think you make a great point about, if a non-family member of staff is wanting to kind of point out the relationship dynamic between two brothers, and they might
yes,
be like thick as thieves, and it feels maybe that they have each other's backs and nobody
yeah,
else's. That's
yeah,
a really hard thing to then
yeah.
say
And
that
then
to
when you get the
someone's face.
parental protection on top of that, like protection, and
Essentially,
that
yeah.
that can be a really like hostile environment, and then that could
Mm,
be one of the reasons why people leave. But
yeah.
unless there is this openness to
Mm,
hear
yeah.
and to accept.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
well, sorry, not accept, because sometimes
Mm,
people can't accept it, but at least to respect the
sure.
fact that somebody's raised it, you
Yeah.
know,
Yeah.
and then to do something about it, or to
Yeah.
just say, well, actually, this is just how it's going to,
Mm,
no one's forcing
mm,
anyone
yeah.
to
Yeah.
change their personalities and ways of working.
Mm,
But if
mm,
they have an issue with their employees leaving, for example,
yeah.
or it's causing friction within the team, or whatever that might
Yeah.
be,
Yeah.
the only way really is to typically change behaviors and thinking
Right.
and ways of working,
Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah. Yeah.
if there isn't that willingness, then
Yeah.
I guess you're going
Yeah.
to sit with the result that you're always getting. So,
Yeah. Totally.
yeah,
Totally.
yeah.
The, the willingness to change, I think, is
Mm.
so key. Do you find in your work that your clients will be your clients because there is a willingness to change? Like,
Yeah, yeah,
so,
definitely. It's really interesting because that they go. I see my clients going through a bit of a change curve. They'll come
mm,
to me because they have this problem. They're really
yeah,
stressed out.
mm,
It can materialize in a number of different ways, but ultimately it's the
mm,
same source
mm,
problem is that people are
mm,
leaving. So it can be that,
yeah,
I don't trust my team, or we're getting client complaints, or whatever it might be, or like, I don't
yeah,
um there isn't enough stability, we can't
mm,
grow our business.
mm,
Yeah, I think um and you see them going through a change of like, oh, I know that there's this problem,
mm,
I really want to fix it. And then they're like,
mm,
when you then
mm,
share, okay, well,
mm,
these are the sorts of things that we can try,
mm,
having listened to your people, because I spend a good chunk of my time
yeah,
facilitating exactly what
yeah,
you kind of said,
yeah,
is that speaking opportunity, whether it's through like
mm,
workshops or something like that, or one to
right,
one.
mm,
There's always
yeah,
a listening exercise, and it's like, well, and then
okay,
they get a bit sort of defensive of like, oh,
yeah,
well,
yeah,
and it's like, but actually this isn't just a one-off person saying
yeah,
this to be
yeah,
malicious. This is a trend
yeah,
that,
trend,
and then they start saying,
yeah,
oh yeah, okay, well, that makes sense. So
yeah,
it's just a typical change curve, right?
yeah,
You want to
yeah,
make some change, you then struggle with the things that
yeah,
you need to change with, because
totally,
it's gonna hurt. It will do,
yeah,
right? When you get that feedback.
yeah,
um but actually, feedback oftentimes is coming from
mm,
the source of the problem. And
yeah,
so, it's important to explore, and I
mm,
work through that with my clients, because
mm,
it
mm,
can be difficult. And then it's
yeah,
not just that initial sort of, I guess, let's call it a bit of a pain.
sure,
It's the,
mm,
okay, well, how do we work through that? Because
mm,
actually the
mm,
better thought,
mm,
instead of like feeling negative about it, the better thought is, okay,
mm,
well, let's see what we can do
mm,
to change this.
right,
Let's build
yeah,
some really helpful habits of like
yeah,
actually
yeah,
speaking to your people, or
yeah,
giving more opportunities for growth,
yeah, yeah,
delegating a bit more, instead of
mm,
holding on to things, and
mm,
everything being on your desk. You've got a
yeah,
team of people around you, so
yeah,
working through that
totally,
stuff,
yeah,
and moving that focus away
mm,
from
mm,
the negative, which we all like to
yeah,
do, right? We all
sure,
like to sort of berate
yeah,
ourselves, and
yeah,
but the better action is the forward
yeah,
action.
yeah,
Mhm.
totally.
Mm. So
As you
that's how
speak
I,
now,
yeah,
yeah,
that's what I see, and how I help them. Yeah.
yeah, no, definitely. And as you speak now, I feel like I can hear some founders who I've worked with,
Really,
like
yeah.
thinking that I, I think as you like point out, I think it can be really hard to hear feedback,
Yeah.
particularly if it's absolutely not what a person intended and it's kind of feels like a big mistake and it's now not that's traveled away. But I think
Yeah.
it's so natural, like so easy to like grab
Mm,
onto those negative things. But for the founders out there, I think it's so
yeah.
it tends to be even heightened. Of course, not every time, but founders treat their businesses like it is
Like
a
another
member of the
child.
family, like it's a
Yeah, yeah,
child, you know.
yeah.
So I
Yeah,
I so
yeah.
hear that.
Yeah, yeah.
Um,
And
yeah,
I think it's not uncommon, right? Everyone would
yeah,
probably feel the same way.
yeah,
It's not that they're doing something wrong.
yeah.
It's just recognizing that,
Mm,
and
mm,
then, you know, taking it as a lesson rather than a
yeah,
punishment.
yeah,
And yeah, so but making that shift can be quite
yeah.
challenging.
Totally,
Yeah, yeah.
totally.
Um, but
Yes.
it's how you then shift into that, I guess, like moving away
Mm,
from a founder and then moving
yeah,
into that CEO role, isn't it? It's how
yeah.
you've got to
Mm,
put some distance
yeah,
between yourself and your business,
yeah.
because
Mm,
it's also not healthy, right? To have
yeah,
it as an extension of you at
totally.
all times.
Yeah,
Yes, of
totally.
course you're going to be proud of what you've
Yeah,
created,
yeah,
but at the same time, yeah, yeah.
yeah,
There needs
definitely.
to be that separation just for health, and
Yeah,
physical and mental
I
health.
know.
Yeah,
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 like the
yeah.
health of your heart organ. Like,
Absolutely. Yeah, yeah,
let's take
yeah.
care of this.
Yeah.
I feel really passionate about what you speak about now, of the distance between an individual as a person,
Mm,
personally,
mm.
and their business.
Right, yeah,
I
yeah.
feel like this is my bread and butter, to be honest.
Yeah,
But it's the thing that I've seen consistently throughout my years of supporting families and businesses together and separately is that
yeah.
when people start to get completely attached and merged in with their business, that
Mm,
it's not even clear where the line is when I feel like
Mm.
there is a line between a person and a business.
Of course.
Um, but when it is so merged, I think
Blurred.
that's when you start seeing problems.
Mm.
Um,
Mm.
I was once talking to a family business, in fact, recently that were having some problems in the way that they were treating their staff, like as though the staff were a part of the family. They were so
Mm.
concerned
Oh,
with
so too
being
much the other way instead of it
too much
being,
the other way. Yeah, that they were
interesting.
so keen on
Yeah.
including that
Yes.
it almost became a little bit confusing to the non-family members of staff, because
Mm.
they were given gifts, they were brought on holidays. It was
Right.
like as though let's bring them all the way in.
Yeah.
And I coached them through finding the line of being exclusive and inclusive. And it
Yeah.
became really challenging when they needed to fire them, when they needed to
Right.
get rid
To
of
make some
people,
changes. Yeah.
make some changes.
It's really interesting. I had a similar thing with one of my clients. It was they're a husband and wife duo,
Uh-huh.
and they started their business in their living room, and then it grew
Yeah.
and grew and grew. Really
Yeah.
successful. They hired some people, but
Yeah.
they unknowingly were became sort of more like friends,
Okay.
with those
Yeah.
people. And so that also didn't help. It wasn't to the extent that
Yeah.
you're saying where they went on
Okay.
holiday together,
Sure. Yeah.
and sort of included them
Yeah.
too
All the way
much
in.
for, yeah.
Yeah.
But what they did feel is that it then started causing problems
Mm.
because, they got, they were
Mm.
answering back, and they were being a bit sort of
Mm.
more cocky and a bit sort of
Yeah.
disrespectful in a way that is really unhelpful,
Mm.
where,
Yeah.
when someone's being asked to help with
Yeah.
something or asked to,
Yeah.
being delegated a task,
Mm.
they'll be like, oh, well, why do we have to do this? Or
Mm.
why do I have to? So it can be
Yeah.
really, you don't, it's a very fine balance. And I can
Yeah.
imagine it's a very
Yeah.
challenging one when you're in there as well, because you're trying to grow your business, you're trying to
Yeah.
make sure that everyone's happy and
Yeah.
they feel included, but perhaps not too much and
Yeah.
not too little,
Not too much.
all of those things. And it's
Yeah.
hard. It's hard.
Yeah.
um it's not,
Mm.
it's I would love to think that people know how to do all this stuff, but
Mm.
you don't, you
No.
don't. and
No.
and
Not when you're
unfortunately
in
you
it.
do.
Yeah.
No, exactly. And
Mm.
because you are too close to it,
Yeah. Yeah.
but also because not everyone knows everything about everything.
Sure.
And
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
but I think the
Mm.
important thing when that realization hits is
Mm.
like, okay, well, what can we
Mm.
do? Like treating it as a
Yeah.
lesson rather than,
Okay. Yeah.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
It
But
sounds,
yeah, no, very interesting about the whole almost over inclusion, right?
yeah. Yeah. I
Mm,
think that
mm,
absolutely there's a point over inclusion is the word for it. Um,
how was that solved? Sorry, I'm really curious now.
to be honest, these were not my clients. This was
Right.
somebody who I heard
Ah.
through later about the
Mm,
pain points looking back.
mm,
But it is that particular dynamic were they were not my clients.
mm.
But it is something that I will absolutely coach my clients through of
Yeah.
the line between inclusion, over inclusion, and then when
Yes.
like what rooms are people not allowed in? Like what is a
Yes.
private room,
Yes.
like a family
Yes.
room?
Yeah,
So it's all
absolutely.
about lines.
Yeah. Well, it's the boundaries. That's exactly
Yeah,
what, we've mentioned that
yeah,
before, haven't we? It's and
yeah,
it's not, again, it's not a boundary for a boundary's sake or a boundary
no,
to exclude. It's a boundary
yeah,
because it makes logical sense for it to be
yeah,
there.
yeah,
Because let's face it, if it were a
mm,
large corporate, you
yeah,
wouldn't have every employee in the boardroom, right?
yeah,
So
exactly.
it's no different when even when you're a
Totally.
smaller business, you still wouldn't have
Yeah,
the every employee involved in
yeah,
senior leadership discussions.
yeah,
Yeah,
totally,
yeah.
totally.
But
I think
but
it's
do you find, sorry,
no, go on.
do you find that, um almost having that distinction, you have to
Mm,
help them set up that
yeah.
distinction of like, yeah.
Yeah, certainly.
Mm,
Absolutely, yes. And I certainly will work on that
mm,
without hesitation. I find that this is
mm,
something that some family businesses will struggle with and it will become a pain
mm,
point, but not all of them.
mm, mm.
So I think it's depends on the family. It's all
Yeah,
super unique in the
yeah.
family business.
Mm,
But no, I
mm,
think this is key to it.
yeah.
Um, Tell me more about leadership and kind of
Mm,
the hierarchy. Because oftentimes when I will speak to members of staff, they will tell me that they will leave a business because they feel that there's no way to progress, that they won't move up
Mm,
into C-suite or into a boardroom because they're not a member of the family.
yeah,
And I think fair point and very
yeah.
interesting, even though I will then go speak to a member of the family and someone who
Mm,
works in the family, because of course not all family members have an
are in that.
active role in the
Hmm.
business, even
Hmm.
though there's ownership. Um, and from their perspective, they feel that it is absolutely possible that non-family members of staff will kind of move up
Mm.
hierarchy in the business.
That's
Um,
really interesting. Because on face
mm,
value, it sounds like that
yeah,
might not then be have been
um,
communicated
sure,
or made very
okay,
clear that there is
yeah,
that opportunity and it's not just a
yeah,
exclusive
yeah,
members club.
sure, absolutely,
Um, so
absolutely,
yeah, but yeah, no, progression is a big thing. Another big
yeah,
reason for why people leave, it's that it forms
mm,
part of that offer and opportunity piece of
yeah,
like,
right,
especially when you've got high
mm,
performers, typically
mm,
they'll want to develop, they're quite hungry to
mm,
learn and grow and take on new
mm,
skills and
yeah,
areas of responsibility. And you can see
mm,
why they might
mm,
feel that that's not an option.
right,
Um,
yeah,
which again,
mm,
there can be, like you've said,
mm, mm,
it's not a
yeah,
no, not never.
yeah,
But I think the key there is to just communicate
mm,
what that looks like, and
mm,
almost to do that. I talk a lot
mm,
about this, about that sort of stepping
mm,
back and slowing
mm,
down a little bit when you're bringing new
yeah,
people in.
right,
To see, actually, do we need a new person in, or can
mm,
we shuffle things
mm,
around and give someone
mm,
else another opportunity, or
mm,
give two people the opportunity to swap and
yeah,
learn different roles?
yeah,
Growth doesn't always necessarily need to come
mm,
with more money and more
mm,
seniority. It
mm,
can come from breadth as
mm,
well.
mm,
And the key
right,
thing to do there is to have
mm,
discussions with that individual of
mm,
what their aspirations
mm,
are.
right,
If you can't genuinely
yeah,
can't meet those within that business,
yeah,
then
mm,
have that conversation early on.
mm,
I
mm,
mean, have it in the
yeah,
recruitment, right?
sure,
Be
sure,
very clear and transparent about what opportunities there are and aren't,
yeah, yeah,
because but
mm,
then being mindful that actually if there are
mm,
no opportunities, actually
yeah,
it's more likely that people will leave. If you want to hire
yeah,
the best people, they will want to
yeah,
be developing and
mm,
growing. So
mm,
just being mindful of like, okay, well, you
yeah,
can't have your cake and eat it, and
yeah,
how can you then
yeah,
offer something that's slightly different, that
mm,
may not be growth in
mm,
seniority, but
mm,
even if it is growth in seniority, that's great.
mm,
But being clear on
mm,
what, again, it's all
mm,
about the boundaries and what does that
yeah,
mean,
yeah,
what conversations will you get involved
yeah,
in, what conversations won't you, the closed
yeah,
door conversations and things like
yeah,
that.
lovely.
But I think that
Mm,
I feel like I'm a broken record. That
mm,
communication piece is so important,
yeah, yeah, lovely.
because the other thing as well, when I talk about the sort of aspirations thing, is that actually some people
Mm,
may still be a really high performer, but they'll just
mm,
be happy
mm,
operating at their very best
mm,
within the
yeah,
parameters of what their role
yeah,
is.
yeah,
And that's also okay, because they're a trusted pair of hands. You can
yeah,
literally just say, actually, Gareth
mm,
runs this part of the
mm,
business because he's
mm,
been doing it for years. He knows everything
mm,
about it. He's really proactive, and that's
mm,
okay.
yeah,
um you
yeah,
know but yeah, just being really
yeah,
clear on a
mm,
for as the employer, what you have
mm,
available, what that opportunity
mm,
could look like,
yeah,
and then knowing what that
mm,
individual, what their aspirations
yeah,
are, making it okay for them to say that,
yeah,
safe
yeah,
space and all of that,
yeah,
and then trying to match
mm,
it. You don't necessarily
mm,
have to create it for
mm,
creating its sake, but
yeah,
if there's a logical, getting people
mm,
to almost to make suggestions about where they see
mm,
themselves fitting in, as
mm,
that's also okay,
yeah,
because then it's a lot more two-way, rather than the employee
yeah,
going, well, I want this, and
yeah,
the business going, well, here, have this, and it's like, well,
yeah,
no, actually I wanted that,
yeah,
not what you've given me. So
yeah,
that two-way thing can be really, really
yeah,
powerful.
yeah,
um as
definitely.
is saying, actually, we can't
Mm,
do that, there isn't the
mm,
space.
yeah, definitely.
Creating roles for creating them sake is just so not helpful,
Mm,
even in the corporate world, let
okay,
alone in a smaller business.
sure, sure.
And
Will you
so
see that that will that has negative consequences down the line. Like,
Oh, 100%. I've seen it work in slightly,
mm,
it's still a smaller business in the sense they were under 100 employees, but yeah,
mm,
creating roles just to promote somebody when actually there wasn't
mm,
really the need.
okay,
Because, you will always need the doers.
right.
And then you've got a slightly lower, smaller group of the
Yeah,
people who lead or manage
yeah,
or whatever that level, that next
yeah,
step up is.
yeah.
And when you start then over promoting, you get
Mm,
less doers and more managers,
mm,
and
yeah,
you then get that thing of, okay, well, there's loads of this stuff at the bottom that isn't being
yeah,
done because
yeah,
everyone's been promoted. So
yeah.
yeah, longer term, and that's just from
Mm,
an operational perspective.
mm,
When you've
mm,
then got the dynamics of family, when you've got the
mm,
dynamics of a smaller business, and
mm,
people see somebody just being promoted just
yeah,
because they've shouted loud enough,
yeah.
you're then sort of setting that sort of precedent of like,
Mm,
actually, I'm going to threaten to leave, I'm going to this, I'm going to that,
yeah,
I'm going to shout about getting promoted, I'll get my promotion, but actually,
yeah.
I'm walking. The reality is that they walk
Mm,
into something that hasn't been properly defined. There
yeah.
isn't a proper need for it. They might start getting
Okay.
bored. Do you see what I mean?
Yeah.
It can open up a whole can of
Mm,
worms,
mm.
if
Oh,
it's just
yeah.
done sort of on a whim and without thought.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely. Because to
yeah.
me, that goes full circle to what we were saying earlier about expectations.
Mm,
Like people
mm,
will then get really unclear about
mm.
what's my role, what's his
Yeah.
or her role,
Mm,
what does that, how does that work? I think that's a great point. And it was really sounding to me like collaboration, like
mm.
that perhaps leadership or whoever has the power and the decision making authority
Yeah.
to have a conversation with this individual about
Yes.
what's wanted, what can be done, where's the
Yeah.
middle ground.
Yeah, absolutely.
Mm,
It's that compromise, isn't it?
mm,
But to
mm,
get to that compromise,
yeah.
and I'm using the word compromise, and it almost implies a kind of like negative thing because somebody's having to
Oh,
back down. I don't
mm,
mean it as that, but I
no.
mean it as,
Uh-huh.
typically people
Yeah.
will want some more money. They'll
Yeah.
want a promotion in
Yeah.
seniority
Mm,
terms, and
yeah.
it's not always possible from a business
Yeah.
perspective, whether commercially or
Yeah.
from a budget perspective, whatever it might be.
Yeah.
And so there needs to be, like you say, that
Mm,
middle ground of, okay, well, this
mm,
is what you've said that you
yeah.
wanted and what you
Yeah.
needed in terms of
Yeah.
progression and opportunity.
Mm, mm,
This is what we can
yeah.
do, and it's that,
Mm,
well, let's be really clear
yeah.
and communicate it in a way actually where everyone is happy,
Yeah.
because they understand how the decision
Mm,
has been like reached
mm,
as well. I
mm,
think when
yeah.
people from however many years, like over 20 years of
Yeah.
experience, the thing I think that frustrates people the most is that they
Mm,
don't know the
mm,
reason behind decisions.
mm, mm.
Now,
Yeah.
there are always some decisions that you're not going to be
Yeah.
able to share, but where you
Yeah.
can,
Yeah.
just talk openly about, well, actually, this is how we've
Mm,
reached this decision to do with your
mm,
salary or to do with this
mm,
role or what have
mm,
you.
mm.
It's like demystifying
Yeah.
something that's
Oh,
typically done behind closed doors.
yeah. Yeah.
What you can share and
Yeah.
won't, um, jeopardize other relationships or other
Yeah.
things that, whatever it
Yeah.
might be, then
Yeah.
share it and just be really clear of,
Yeah.
like, actually, we thought about this, we explored this, we looked at
Mm,
that, this wasn't
mm,
an option, but actually
mm,
you said this, you asked for this, so
mm,
we looked at this as an option as well, but when we
mm,
did that we couldn't quite make it work, anything like
mm.
that.
Yeah.
It
Yeah.
helps that person to understand that some thought did go behind it and
Mm,
it wasn't just a no,
mm. Yeah. Yeah.
or yes, or whatever that might be,
Yeah.
and it helps them to understand that you've given it, some time,
Mm.
but
Yeah.
explaining the logic behind it. And I think that
Yeah.
really that can really help people to,
Mm.
not disarm them, but to
Mm.
take away
Yeah.
that sting of the initial
Yeah. Yeah.
decision.
Just an answer. Yeah. Oh,
Yeah.
definitely. I feel like that sits really well with me as you
Mm.
speak there. Because to me, I know that communication is like a
Yeah.
real strong pillar of yours, but you
Yeah,
talk
yeah.
about it being like an approach that values communication,
Mm.
inclusivity to say,
Mm.
let's like open dialogue, you're allowed to know, like you're
Mm.
involved, and collaboration, that
Yeah.
it would get shared together and there's a conversation there.
Yeah. Yeah.
Um, Love that.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Love that.
Yeah, because then, you're including, it goes back to your inclusivity piece, but on
Mm,
in the right way rather than
mm,
going too
yeah,
far.
yeah, yeah,
But equally it's giving the information that people
yeah,
probably need as well to
sure.
accept things and
Yeah,
to understand things.
yeah,
Yeah.
definitely. I feel like one of my takeaways right now is that like if it can be shared,
Yeah.
then share it.
Yeah,
Like,
absolutely. Absolutely.
why
Why
not?
not? Why not? One of my clients I worked with, I said, oh, how often do you talk about how well the business is
Mm,
doing, where
mm,
perhaps things are not so well,
mm,
how often do you share that with the team? Oh, we've never done
mm.
that. Why
Yeah,
not?
missed
Oh,
opportunity.
we've never really thought about it. Okay, so
Yeah,
what could
yeah,
that look like? Give
yeah,
a little update of that. Actually, this is why
mm,
we're really pushing this particular
yeah,
product or this particular service that we offer because actually
mm,
we really need to because
yeah,
we're a little bit lower on sort of
mm,
sales as compared to last year, but
yeah,
actually this part is doing really, really well. So
yeah,
please keep on doing more of that. And
mm,
yeah,
yeah,
absolutely share it with people.
mm,
It's not,
mm,
I think sometimes, especially when you're sharing things that are like, for example, oh, we're
mm,
down on sales in comparison to
mm,
last year, that
mm,
might feel almost like, and
yeah,
I can understand why, because it might
sure.
feel like you're admitting a bit of failure
Okay.
or that you're not, that things aren't going so well.
Mm,
And that can be challenging. But
mm,
when you have the right team around you,
mm,
they will want to
mm,
help you.
yeah,
They'll want to understand A, why there's
yeah,
such a push on certain things,
yeah,
but
yeah,
B, if you share that in the right way and you've got a bit of a
yeah,
plan, or even if you include them in
mm,
co-creating a plan of
mm,
how can we close
mm,
that gap in sales,
yeah,
that's it. You've got more brains in the
mm,
room to help you
yeah,
identify a solution,
yeah,
and you've then got really
mm,
excited people who want to go and
mm,
get and
mm,
hit that goal and help the
mm,
business to succeed.
yeah,
It's
yeah,
all about that context setting.
yeah,
Mm,
sure,
mm.
sure. It sounds as though your approach is very much like that there's strength in like the unity. Like there's more brains in the room when people are
Absolutely.
inclusive.
Absolutely,
Um,
absolutely, yeah. And
mm,
there's more diversity of thought. There's more there's more creativity. There's all sorts of benefits from it.
mm,
It can
mm,
very
mm,
quickly go into a bit of
yeah,
overdrive and get quite messy and a
sure.
bit of like who shouts
Okay.
loudest.
Okay.
And I guess in a family setting that can be
Sure.
quite
Yeah.
challenging, right?
Yeah.
Because
Yeah.
it might be that the family
Mm,
members shout louder, and so
yeah.
they seem to get
Yeah.
heard. Their views
Yeah.
get heard more. But
Sure.
um, I think
Mm,
it's really healthy
mm,
to
mm,
do that.
mm,
And as a business owner or founder, you can't possibly be
mm.
expected to have all of the solutions and all of the
Yeah.
ideas,
Yeah.
but that's where you
Definitely.
use the strength of your team, to
Yeah.
come up with some
Yeah. Yeah.
some thoughts around
Some
it.
points.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. And even then
Definitely.
go one further of like explore,
Mm,
actually the more feasible ones, like these are the two
mm,
more feasible options.
mm.
Let's look at that in more detail.
Do it.
Let's see, could it work?
Yeah. Yeah.
You know. And that just
Love that.
takes but you can just see how that would take the strain off the
Mm,
founder, right?
mm.
Because
Yeah.
actually it's that power of collective thought
Yeah.
versus just them on their own.
Yeah. Definitely. Definitely. I
Yeah.
think there's a lot to be said about
Mm.
collaboration and including people
Mm.
in relation to feeling that people are not alone, that they actually have a
Yeah.
team there. Like
Yeah.
the takeaways, like the advantages, I guess, is
Yeah.
absolutely incredible.
Yeah. Yeah.
Definitely.
Yeah, because one of the things as well, I guess, with inclusivity and with a from a sort of sense of belonging, it is that
Mm,
that
yeah,
feeling that you're part of something bigger.
yeah,
And
yeah,
when you then give your people that context
yeah,
of like, actually, this is
yeah.
where we're going, but we're
Mm,
not quite sure how to get there. Hey, let's come
yeah,
together and find some
come
ideas.
together. Yeah,
Wow, I know what I'm working towards.
yeah, yeah.
Because then after you've come up with those ideas,
Mm,
okay, well actually you finance person or you marketing
mm,
person or you product person or you
yeah,
ops person, production, whatever it might
yeah,
be, everyone
yeah.
then knows, yeah,
Mm,
fantastic. And
brilliant.
it's literally collaborative teamwork.
Yeah, yeah,
Every
definitely.
player knows what position they're on in the
Yeah,
field.
yeah,
So like,
totally.
yeah, yeah.
Totally. Love that.
Mm,
Um,
mm,
before we wrap up this
mm.
podcast, I wonder where people can find more about you. Like if people want to reach out,
Oh,
where can they
yeah.
go? And I will link
Yeah.
all links down below.
Perfect, thank you. So I'm most active on LinkedIn. I also have a blog on my website as well,
Uh-huh.
thepeoplekeeper.com.
Yeah.
But yeah, happy for people to connect with me, chat
Mm,
to me.
mm,
But yeah, those are the two places that you can find me. I do have a
thank you.
newsletter as well, which you can sign up on my website
Yeah.
for as well. Yeah, and I usually tend to sort of say it as it is.
Yeah.
I don't
You
tend to
do.
filter things. So
Yeah.
yeah, quite sort of open and
So,
honest about
uh,
what's going on. But yeah,
cool. Thank you so much.
thank
Thank you.
you, thank
It's
you,
been wonderful to have you. Thank you so much for your
thanks,
time
Emily.
and sharing.